Hi all, Dr. Clark here again. And for this little video or lecture, I'm going to introduce what I'm considering the biodiversity collection. And it should be considered the animal biodiversity collection because this is fish and wildlife management. This collection has to be animal based. Uh, it has to be an animal based collection. Okay. So under normal circumstances, when you would take a fish and wildlife class that might be live, um, your collection might be a skull collection, a pelt collection, or a fully preserved organism collection. There's numerous different varieties of collections out there, and there's reasons for having students collect. Normally, a collection does a couple things. It allows you to learn different species. It allows you to get out and experience nature. It allows you to go through methods of collection and preservation. Okay? And so, even though this is a virtual class or a online class, I still feel that a collection is a valuable resource because it allows you to get out, experience nature, and see organisms in their natural settings. Okay, so that brings me to the collection. Okay. Now, the collection itself is worth 100 points. So each organism, you have 20 living organisms that you have to take a picture of. Okay, so you have to take a photograph of 20 living organisms, and each one's worth 5 points. Okay, now it's not just the picture, but it's the data that comes along with them that's worth 5 points. Okay, so and I'll go through this in a little bit. Okay, first of all, there's some rules to these 20 organisms. They must be wild. Okay, that means they cannot be captive. They cannot be captive bred. They can't be pets. They can't be zoo animals, etc. They have to be wild. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't go to like feeding grounds and take a picture of an elk on a feeding ground. They're still wild animals, even though they might be coming to a region that is like a feeding ground. Or even wild horses might be coming to a region to be fed. That's still their wild organisms. Okay, but be careful with where you're taking the picture at because the organism has to be in its native habitat. Okay, so I don't want you to pick up a lizard and take a picture of a lizard in your hand, or maybe you see a black widow in your house and you take a picture of a black widow, or cages or anything like that. Those are not native habitat. Okay? Yes, spiders live in your house, and but that doesn't mean that that's their native habitat. That's not the habitat that they would prefer, the niche that they've evolved for. They did not evolve for the corner of your room. Okay, so the organism has to be in native habitat. The picture must be your picture. Okay? You have to be the photographer. There's no sharing of pictures. There's no stealing stuff from the internet, okay, or anything like that. I belong to lots of photography, wildlife photography pages. I will search your images on databases, and if I get hits and you are not the author, you will fail the assignment. 0 out of 100. So don't even think about stealing stuff from the internet. And I don't care if you paid for the picture or not. Hey, it's still stealing pictures from the internet. You have to be the author. Okay, and that goes for maybe somebody in the class and they take a great picture of, a white-tailed deer and they use it and they shared it with you. They sent you a text message with the picture and you used it. Right? Nope. No sharing of photos. Okay, and the last rule is it has to be alive. I know those of you that are hunters and fishermen and things like that, you like to take a picture of the organism after you've shot it or thumped it over the head or whatnot. Okay, that's perfectly fine, but those will not count as 20 living organisms. Okay, the organism has to be alive when you take the picture. Okay, so those are just some rules to the collection. Some requirements for the collection. Okay, first, it has to be a good photo. That doesn't mean that the photo has to be professional grade. It doesn't mean that you have to be a professional photographer. I'm not expecting that from you. If you were a professional photographer, then it's highly unlikely you're going to be taking this course because you've probably already been making money. Maybe it's photography. But at any rate, a good quality photograph doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be able to sell the photograph. Good quality means that it has to be high enough quality that I, the instructor of the course, can identify the organism that you took a picture of. So if you take a picture of an organism and only the leg of the organism is showing in the picture, and that's not one of the identifying marks that can be used to identify that creature, then you're not going to get credit. You're going to miss all 5 points for that organism. So poor quality, so blurry pictures, unidentifiable organisms will result in automatically missing 5 points. It doesn't matter if the data is there and all the information is there. If I can't identify it from your photo, and then it is minus 5 points. The second requirement is you must have the common name and scientific name for the organism. Okay. Third requirement is you must know the exact location that the picture was taken at. Okay. And this must be recorded in UTMs, or Universal Transverse Mercator. Okay. And I'll go over this in a second. It's fairly simple to get UTMs if you're not familiar with that measurement of lat and longitude. UTMs are universal, so the entire planet can utilize UTMs versus some of the other things. And I'll show you what I'm talking about in a second. Okay? But again, it has to be the exact location where the organism was virtually captured. Okay? I need the date and the time that the photo was taken, the weather, what was the climate like when the photo was taken. So was it rainy, sunny, cloudy? What was the wind speed? What was the temperature? These kind of things. And I'll show you an example here in a second. And then what's the status of the organism? Can you hunt it? Can you fish it? Is it endangered? Is it threatened? Is it, extremely common? These kind of things. And realize that I want the hunting, fishing status of the organism in the region that you took the photograph from. So yes, maybe you took a picture of a sage grouse and you took it in Colorado. Realize the hunting status of that bird in Colorado is no hunting. Right? It's a threatened species. If you would have took the picture of sage grouse in Wyoming, then that organism is huntable. There's a hunting season for it. Okay, so again, the status of the organism is dependent on where you took the photo of. Okay, and then the ecological habitat type. What region, what's the habitat that the organism was, that the picture was taken of the organism, or that the organism was in? And, often adding a note of why it was there. If it's a rare picture, like you see a certain species and, it's out of place. Like maybe you took a picture of a sage grouse and it's right next to a wetland. Then maybe you might need an explanation of what you think the organism was doing in that region. Okay, so let me give you an example of a organism or one of these 20 living organisms collection. Okay? Now, I highly suggest, and it'll make it easier on you and easier on me if you just set up a PowerPoint, okay, and each slide is an individual species that you've collected, virtually collected. Okay, so for example, this is a mule deer. This is my original picture. Okay, so mule deer, Oricoleus hemionus, that's the scientific name. Okay. This is the UTMs for this picture, for this virtual capture with elevation. This is the date and time. Now, some of you might be like, hey, it's, mid-fall. I can't get all the photographs that I could earlier. That's fine. For those of you who take pictures, or for those of you who have pictures from, say, the summer or even last spring, those photographs are perfectly fine to use. Okay? They just have to be dated 2019. So they have to have been taken in the year 2019. Okay? As long as you have the information, like where it was, what the temperature was, what the weather was like, and kind of the ecological description of the region, then you're perfectly fine with using a photograph that was taken earlier in the year. For example, this picture, okay, it was taken in the summer, okay, and at 9:30 in the morning. So I have here the weather, sunny, clear skies, 75 degrees Fahrenheit, 5 to 10 miles per hour out of the southwest. Okay. I have its status. It's hunted across the state of North Dakota. Okay. And then I have an ecological description. Theodore Roosevelt National Park, that's where the picture was taken, in the Badlands of North Dakota. It's dominated by sagebrush and tall grass. Multiple individuals in the region browsing on the sagebrush and tall grass. So even though logically I don't probably need to provide why there was a bunch of organisms in this region, but I do anyways because it provides the reader kind of a point of reference. Why is this mule deer in this habitat currently? What was it doing there? And it was browsing on sagebrush and tall grass. Okay. All right. So that's a sheet or one collection. You need 20 living organisms that you've photographed, okay, and this information on them. Okay, so let's jump over real quick to a quick way to figure out UTMs, a way that you can find out the coordinates for your organism, or where you took the picture at. You can find the coordinates, the lat lon, in UTMs very easily and free. I highly suggest downloading Google Earth Pro. Okay, it's completely free, and then you have a source for lat long of whatever photograph it was that you took. When you first get into Google Earth Pro, you need to go over to the tools, and you need to go to options, and then where it says show lat long, okay, it has a bunch of things, and I believe the default is degrees, minutes, seconds, okay, but you want to go to Universal Transverse Mercator and click on that. This will, oh, sorry. This will display the UTMs here at the bottom. Okay, and UTMs, you can see it says 13T, blah, 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 meters east. Okay, and then blah, 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 meters north. And then it also gives the elevation here. I know this organism was pictured right here in this grove. Okay, so I can put the cursor over that and it will tell me the exact UTM. So all you need to do is when you take a photograph, note where you were on a map, and then when you get back, just write a note to yourself where you were when you took the photograph. When you get back to a computer, or if you have, if you can hotspot or Wi-Fi connect your computer right then and there, you can Google Earth and pull it up, find out the UTMs, and you're good to go. Now, again, the reason why I use UTMs and you should, as a young student, start using UTMs is if you're going to work with things like ArcGIS or other mapping programs. UTMs are a very valuable and useful resource from that point of view. But it's better to present something in UTMs from a planet-wide or worldwide perspective. It's much like using the scientific name of an organism versus its common name. So let's say I use mallard duck, and I take a picture of a mallard duck and present that, and then I send that picture to someone in Australia, and I say, "Hey, check out this mallard duck." Well, to Australians, that's not a mallard duck. That's the Australian duck. Or I send it to India, to people from India. That's known as the Indian duck. Okay? But if I said, check out this mallard duck, comma, Anas platyrancus, okay, then it doesn't matter if you're from Australia or India or wherever you're at on the planet, the scientific name is universal. UTMs are universal. Now, lat long that's represented in degrees, minutes, seconds, or degrees percent is not universal because it depends on what side of the equator you're on whether or not you're positive or negative numbers. Okay, and it's also, depends on what side of the midline you are on whether you're positive or negative. So in the case of North America, our longitude is actually negative. And if you forget the negative, then it will say that you're somewhere in Russia or in Europe, okay, or northern China, all because you forgot to write the negative. Or if you're using an Excel spreadsheet and the negative is dropped, then it always shows up like, hey, you collected this picture in Russia or, northern China. Okay, and that's why UTMs are much more universal. There's no negatives, there's no differences in conversions or anything like that. Everything's positive, and everything is based upon a grid system that the whole planet is broken up into. Okay. All right, so with that, pretty simple. The collection is due the last day of class. I will put a link up, okay, the final week of class, and the very last day by 11:59 of class, your collection, your virtual collection of 20 living organisms, photos of 20 living organisms, needs to be uploaded. Okay? If you have questions about identification or anything like that, let me know. Now, again, it has to be an animal, so that's pretty broad. I mean, you can take pictures of insects, you can take pictures of fish, amphibians, reptiles, mammals, birds, so it makes no difference. They don't have to be huntable. If you don't want to take pictures of things that have a hunting season, that's completely fine, but you still need to tell me the status of the organism. Is it endangered, threatened, common, etc.? Okay, so if you have questions, just let me know. Shoot me an email, give me a phone call, and we'll deal with it then. Till next time.